YouTube world? This is Nicholas Montez here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Nicholas Montez. Welcome back to another YouTube channel video, everybody. I'm so excited to have you all back here together again. Now, in today's video, if you can tell, by the time we're watching this, it is May 22nd at like 9 a.m. or something. But the time I'm filming this, it is May 14th at 10:15 p.m. Because today, on May 14th, X-Men: The Last Stand came out on Disney+, and because of that, I thought it would be the perfect, and then I also watched the New Mutants, so I thought it would be the perfect time to do a tier list of all 13 of the X-Men films. So, with that said, and just to be clear, I've seen all the movies, and I'm actually surprised that I did, because it's one of those franchises that I just have not seen, but now I've finally seen all 13 movies, and I finally made it, and yeah, so I can actually join the fan club of this series. But with that said, let's get started talking about all 13 of these movies. Okay, so, I didn't really know how to use my other tripod. If you don't know what other tripod I'm talking about the one that used to be up on, right here. Like, that's where I used to film my videos. So I'm not really gonna use it. I'm just gonna use my regular tripod that I've been using in my normal videos, my, future videos. So before we get started, let's just kind of go over the, tiers that we have. So, the first one is A+ tier. I didn't think S tier would be, like, the best tier to pick with. So, I decided to go with S tier, with A+ tier. And then, of course, A, B, C, D, F, down to the worst. And then my bottom, like very bottom tier is Z tier. I didn't really think E tier or trash tier would work, so I thought Z was like the definition of the worst. Granted, there's some movies that won't technically fit in all of these tiers, but most of them will. But most of these films will fit into different categories. Okay, so in case you're wondering, the list is down here. And this tripod is tall, so we can't show the whole screen. So I'm just gonna roll this down so you can see all the films. And let's get, wait, hang on. There we go. Okay, so the first movie that I want to talk about is, of course, and just to let you know, we're doing this in chronological order, like we did last time, because, well, actually we didn't do this last time. This is my first time. Whatever. We're doing it in chronological order like I did with the MCU tier list and the Pixar tier list that I did back in December when Soul came out. But now we're doing it in chronological order again with the X-Men franchise. And let's get started talking about the first X-Men. And I have a story with this. When I first saw this back in August of 2020, when it started streaming on Disney+, I did not like it as much. I just thought it was a solid B. But then I saw it with my mom, and I feel like there was something about it, like there was some magic of it that I felt like I actually kind of liked. And so let's just kind of talk about it. The first thing you gotta talk about is that the really the action, well, not the action, the characters I thought were pretty enjoyable. You know, Wolverine, he's a pretty cool character. I kind of like once his relationship with Charles Xavier, I thought was really good. I also thought that the way he wants to find out his past, and Charles Xavier is kind of like the person to do that, and I think that kind of creates very cool storytelling. It can make the character of Wolverine much more powerful, and I think that it's really cool the way they do that. And also the other characters I thought was really good. And the way they kind of do the whole worldview of mutants is really cool. So, and really the way they kind of introduce all these characters, the way they introduce everything, I think works. I mean, it may not seem like a lot, but if you really watch the movie, it does seem like a lot of stuff to like. But also, the movie is a bit weak on action. But the action sequences that I actually thought were pretty good. And that's the thing, with certain movies like Avengers Endgame, or Iron Man. Like, those movies, they are weak on action, but you're not really caring for the action because you love the character of Iron Man so much. And that's something that's never really bothered me. And I mean, I'm not really sure I can do anything to fix that. But yeah. So where am I going to put the first X-Men? I'm going to put it in the B tier. That is where it's going. Right there at the B tier. Oh, and also one more thing is that when I do this tier, I'm not gonna put it in like order of when it was released in the tiers. I'm just gonna put it in the order of whether I like it better than that one film. And then we have X-Men 2, X-Men United. This is a film I like a whole lot better than the first X-Men. Because I thought that the story was a little bit more exciting. First off, we get to see Wolverine go full berserk in his thing. And I believe this was the first time we actually ever got to see that. And the action was actually really good, and especially when Wolverine was fighting Stryker's soldiers. And then I also like how they focused on Iceman and that fiery guy, whoever that guy was. So I thought the way that they kind of told the story, the way they kind of had some small character arcs, I thought was pretty well done. And yeah, so overall, it has some pretty emotional stuff when Jean Grey dies at the end, even though she comes back in X-Men The Last Stand. But overall, it's a really good film, and I would actually say it's better than the original. So it's not like my favorite X-Men film, but it's still up there. And now we come to X-Men The Last Stand. And if you guys know, by the time you're watching this, it is May 22nd, which means I've already watched this film, which means it's like a week. You guys are a week late that you knew that it was streaming on Disney Plus. Technically, it's very new for when I'm filming this, and I just saw this today, and I gotta tell you, I love this movie. Now I know that it has a lot of plot going on with the cure for the mutants and Magneto's brotherhood and basically the Phoenix Saga, but I think every single plot line that they mix together is kind of cool. Some parts of it, when they focused on the Phoenix Saga, and then they focused on Angel, and then they focused on something different, I feel like that it kind of connects together. Now, one thing I just didn't understand is, now, basically, Magneto's plot, now, sometimes it can't, some of the plot lines, the Phoenix Saga and the Brotherhood plot line, yeah, that can't, sometimes it doesn't really work. But, I don't really understand why Jean Grey went with Magneto. It just never been explained to me. I don't understand why. But then the Cure plotline, I like all of these plot lines. I thought they had good setups, but I think the way they basically ended with the story that they were telling, I don't really think they ended off successfully. So I think the way that we were leading up to them, I thought was great, but the way they ended their story arcs, just did not think that was great. So it still has some great moments, but I'm actually gonna put this in the A tier. Yeah, I said it. I love X-Men X-Men, The Last Stand. And now we have X-Men Origins Wolverine. And I know where this film is going, but I'll talk about it after I put it in the tier. D tier. Now, the reason why I don't put it in the F tier is because I think that because this is an X-Men movie, and it's a comic book movie, I think there's something about it that I just enjoy very much. And that's really just has to do with Wolverine's charm. And of course, it kind of gives you the action that you want, especially when he's beating up Sabretooth. Like, I thought that when he was beating up Sabretooth, it looked really cool. And when he was fighting the helicopter, I thought it looked very cool too. It just kind of had that comic book aesthetic to it. And of course, everybody, when they heard about this movie, when it was being made, everybody was excited for this because they love the character of Wolverine, and they love the character of Wolverine. So it makes sense. But for me, this movie just it does not work. Now on it, I don't think the way they told. Now I think the setup of Wolverine's origin story was pretty good. When you started off, it kind of I thought that the way they kind of told it at the beginning, it just kind of makes it awkward when he basically just kills his father and then he starts to grow little claws, and it just feels awkward. And then it kind of has like that Captain America the first, an early 2-year early Captain America the First Avenger, where Wolverine and Sabretooth are going through the wars that they went through. And then they captured by Stryker, which doesn't make sense. And then they create this whole story that creates this whole 6-year time jump, and that doesn't make sense. And then when they do that, now the story and then like the way that it kind of does all that, I don't think really works. But then they created this storyline that the reason why Wolverine got adamantium is because Stryker was doing tests on Wolverine so he could do tests on mutants. And that's a clever plot line, but I don't think it was really executed that well, because the way they do it is they use unfinished Deadpool to defeat Logan and Sabretooth. And that is just not the best thing to do. So some of the characters I don't really think are that great. The action's great. Some of the Wolverine is great. Well, sorta. But most of it just does not work for me. So it's a watchable film, but it's not great. So for me, it's one of X-Men's weakest films. Alright, next up we have X-Men First Class. And this is gonna surprise some people, but I love this movie. When I first saw it back in November of 2020, I loved it. And the reason for that is because it really has to do with the relationship between Charles Xavier and Eric Lehnsherr. Their relationship just works so well. And it's not just that. It really is kind of the whole film in general. When we get the introduction of the original X-Men, these original mutants with Jennifer Lawrence Mystique, Nicholas Hoult Beast, the other characters that we all know and love. It's just really cool to see them at their early stages. And also, it was kind of cool to explore their powers, and the CGI was actually pretty cool. And also, Kevin Bacon is kind of is a little bit, I think he's actually what is that word you say? What's that word you say that it means like it's underrated? Yeah, this X-Men First Class is underrated, and I think it needs more love than it usually does. And then also the third act, the action is fantastic. And also the third act is probably one of my favorite third acts of the entire series, and it really just has to do with I love that I think that this is one of the films that really has to do with humans and mutants very nicely. So I think that they handle that stuff very nicely, and like when Magneto is trying to kill the humans, and then Charles is trying to stop him, and then all the other X-Men are trying to stop Magneto too, and then boom, Charles gets stabilized, and you're like, oh my gosh! So that's how he like is able to. That's how he's sitting in a wheelchair this whole time. Like, I didn't know how he was able to lose his legs, but that was a shocking moment. I mean, I think I've seen a scene of that on YouTube before, but yeah, that was a shocking moment for me. And then the music after that just was fantastic. So I love this movie. I mean, it's not like fantastic or anything. I mean, it's not like A+ tier or anything, but it's definitely going up there as one of the best X-Men movies. Alright, next up we have Wolverine. Now, this is a movie that I saw a couple months back, I believe 4 months ago, back in January, and I remember liking it. I thought that the story of, telling Wolverine's story after X-Men: The Last Stand, because he's having nightmares of what happened to Jean because he was in love with Jean, and because he loves her. And I thought that story, there's some things in here that just did not work for me. First off, the story was just kind of confusing. You didn't really know who the villain was, and they try to do all these comic booky characters, and it just does not work. Now, granted, there's some parts of I like how they kind of do these Chinese martial arts stuff with some of the characters, and it kind of explores Japan, and it does all that. So I think that's the interesting part about it. But as a whole, they just spend too much time doing mutant stuff. I'm turning Japan ninjas into mutants, they just do all these weird comic booky things that I just don't think work. So for me, this is a film I enjoy, but it's not well put together. So I'm gonna put this film in this C tier because I do have some personal enjoyment out of this film because of the action. Alright, next up we have X-Men: Days of Future Past. Now, this is one of the first official X-Men films that I actually watched. If you guys know, they released this film back on Disney Plus, back in July of 2020, and I absolutely love this movie. Right off the bat, the way they tell the story in this movie is fantastic, and the characters are just so good. Charles Xavier, I'm so glad we actually got to see a deeper side of him, because the way we do that is really cool, as we get to see him go through life, and he's doubting himself that he's not gonna be able to get back Raven, and you could see what he's been through as he's arguing with Eric. And then it also gives you some classic scenes from the Quicksilver kitchen sequence to Magneto's speech at the end. It just has some classic scenes of the entire franchise, and it also has some powerful themes about learning to believe in others. And I think that the way they do that theme in this film is really cool. And James McAvoy's acting in this film as Charles Xavier is fantastic. I'm not sure if this movie won an Oscar, but I think it should. If I was in charge of the Oscars at 2014, I would say that this was the best comic book film of this year. Well, probably not. That would probably go to Winter Soldier. But and also the action was really good. I thought that every time all the action sequences were very clever. Whether it was the Sentinel whether it was the original X-Men fighting the Sentinels, or basically Wolverine fighting the security guards with pots and pans and stuff like that. That was of course fun to see. A new type of fighting style for Wolverine. I like that stuff. But the things I don't like about it is that I wish we had more of the original X-Men, and I feel like when the movie ends, there's just some things that aren't explained very well. When we're talking about Wolverine getting taken by Stryker, but then it turns out to be a mistake. But then in X-Men Apocalypse, turns out that Stryker did actually steal Wolverine, so it doesn't really make sense. So I guess he did steal him somehow 1 year or something. I don't know. But overall, other than that stuff, this film is fantastic, and I absolutely love it. It's not quite as good as X-Men First Class, but it's going up there as good as that. Alright, next up we have Deadpool. Bro, I'm sorry about this, but I'm getting a little bit tired, but that's just because I had a long week. Whew. Good thing I only have one video to do after this, and I'm glad it's not as long as this video. Okay, so next up we have Deadpool. And when I first saw this with my mom, I saw this with my mom. And when I first saw it, I didn't like it as much because, I don't know, I just thought it was a generic comic book film. And most of the action sequences I just saw on YouTube. But when I watched it, I liked it. I thought, I honestly watched a couple of scenes, and I thought to myself that it had some stuff that I liked. Right off the bat, when I saw the action sequence of the opening sequence, like, the action is just so clever in this film. Like, it's so, like, the opening sequence is just so new and different, where Deadpool's doing all these inappropriate jokes and beating people up and doing all the painful things that bad guys should be getting, and then it does, like, this slow motion thing where Deadpool, like, hold on a minute, did I light the stove on? And then it, like, fades to normal time, and then the chain, like, cuts the guy's head off, and then like swings a guy out of the car, and then like he gets hit by a billboard, and then like the action is just so creative and so great. And then also the movie is just very funny, from the bad guys falling, and even though it's mostly inappropriate jokes, it's also just regular jokes in general. And I also like that. And also, some of the characters I actually think are pretty cool. The way they kind of bring in Negasonic Teenage Warhead and Colossus, well, our past version of Colossus, I think the way they kind of do that is actually kind of cool. And the way they kind of make those characters involved in the action, I thought was actually pretty cool. Like, when Colossus was fighting Angel Dust, I love that stuff. So that was just very cool. And then I like the romance between him and his girlfriend. I really like that. And then it also kind of has some horror vibes, well, suspenseful vibes to it, where Francis is looking for Wade, and they're not telling him, and so they gunpoint him. But then the other guys gunpoint him, and it's like, oh yeah, this is awesome. It's kind of cool to see the side characters of movies get gunpoint or something like that, or getting threatened. So it's kind of fun to see that. But overall, this is a very good movie. I don't know, there's just some things about this movie I don't really like. I feel like Deadpool, with his accuracy, he just does too much. He just does way too much. And I feel like they need to dim it down a bit. So, overall, I do like this movie, but it's not like the best of the best. So where am I gonna rank it? I'm gonna rank it at the top of B tier. And now we have X-Men Apocalypse, which I actually did like. I feel like that after coming off of X-Men Days of Future Past, I thought that this was a more likable film. It's not likable. I mean, it's not like great film or anything, but I thought that it was a pretty good film. Well, I mean, not pretty good, but I thought it was watchable. I thought the way they handled Magneto's character arc with his family, I thought was pretty good. And then just the way that they kind of continue the story with Charles still hiding in the way the world has changed after Days of Future Past, the way that Mystique has kind of become a idol to all future superheroes. I thought that was pretty cool. But there's just some things in this movie that the execution of them just don't work. And it really has to do with the Apocalypse storyline and really his plan in general. It mostly just feels generic, and sometimes the characters don't really have that much. Now, Quicksilver, I like Quicksilver in this movie, where he actually has sort of an arc with Mystique. I actually like his interactions with Mystique, his talk with Mystique. When I found out that he was Magneto, Magneto was Peter's father, I was a little bit shocked, because I kind of forgot about that. Because I forgot Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were Magneto's kids. But yeah, I do like this movie, but it's not the best, so we're going in C's here. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. Whew, only 4 films left. I'm not saying this to be rude, but it's just I'm tired a little bit. So I'm gonna finish after this. I'm gonna have to finish watching The Woman in the Window, and then film my review for it. Whew. Now, okay, next up we have Logan, and this is a film that I think does a lot of great things. It really I love the character of Wolverine. And I think that this film has a lot of great themes. Well, not themes, but like, it has a lot of cool ideas of exploring Charles Xavier and Logan at different points in time. With Logan, you get to see him getting older, seeing what he's been through. You could see that because he's older, he is having trouble with his claws. He's not healing faster. Like, things are more different about him than he was when he was back as an X-Men. And then with Charles Xavier, the idea that I thought was very interesting is that they actually made him have seizures, which is actually something I would never think about putting in a film like this, as it's mostly about death, regret, redemption, you know, the fun stuff of movies. And then it also just mixes in the themes of family, and it also feels like a horror film at times, and of course the action. The action is probably one of the best things about this film. I love the action. I think it's great, especially when you get to the third act, where all the kids basically kill all the guys. I just think it's great. So for me, this is a solid A. Sorry, my computer was a little slow there. Alright, we have 3 films left. Alright, Deadpool 2. Like I said, this is another one of those movies that I watched recently. Well, 4 months ago. In January. And this is another movie I watched with my mom because she liked the first Deadpool. So I wanted to watch it, and it was free. So for me, Deadpool 2, I like the first Deadpool, so obviously I like this one too. But it's not as good as the original. Now, on the positives, the action is probably better than the original film. I just think the way it's choreographed is just so well done. Especially the way they kind of do some of my favorite action sequences, where they take these characters, where they do something creative with the action, where they have stuff with the action, the way they kind of do it, where, like, Cable basically tears a car door off of a car and then hits Deadpool with it, and then that's clever action to do. So I thought that was very cool. And then just the other action sequences, like in the prison sequence, I thought was really cool. When Deadpool was just like hitting Cable with a pipe, or just the other clever action sequences, like all of them. Or when Deadpool was like killing all the guys from Japan to Italy, Sicily, Italy, all the action is great in this film, and especially when Colossus and Juggernaut fight, or Cable and Deadpool fight those homophobias. So, but the big problem here is that it just feels like it has too much plot going on. Oh, one more thing I do have to say is that the theme of family, I thought was actually pretty well done in this film. The way that I thought it made sense of how it connected with the kid in the end. So I thought that was a very cool storyline to create with. So overall, this is still an enjoyable, fun time, but it's not as good as the original. So I'm gonna put this in at the bottom of B tier. Next up, we have X-Men Dark Phoenix. Now this is a film that I enjoyed. First off, the action, of course, it's great. They do so much clever things with the action, from Quicksilver to Magneto to having all the characters do what they do best with their fighting styles, with Beast throwing people off of trains, Storm shooting people with lightning in the face. They do a lot of creative things with the action. So I love the action in this movie. And because Magneto isn't one of those guys that punches people in the face to win a fight, he uses metal, and so I didn't really think that would be very creative, but it is. And I love that. And also I kind of like how they were kind of like their own heroes in their own world, where they're not really thinking about mutants anymore as threats. They're looking at the X-Men, who are heroes. And I think that's kind of cool in their own, as they're the heroes of their own movie. But other than that, the story is very confusing. The way they kind of handle the Phoenix Saga just handles it poorly, and none of it, the way it kind of comes together, does not really work, and it kind of ruins X-Men: The Last Stand a little bit. So for me, I wish there was other bad things I can explain about the movie, but that's really all I can say from there. But most of it just kind of feels bland, if I have to say that. And also our villain it's just kind of forgettable. She doesn't have a motivation. She tries to motivate Jean in some way to fight the X-Men, and I just don't understand that. So sorry, Dark Phoenix, but you're going in D tier, but above X-Men Origins Wolverine. And finally we have the New Mutants, which is the film that I also saw recently, and I actually like this film. Granted, it's not like the pinnacle of all these films, as it is the closing of the Fox franchise until we get our X-Men film in the MCU. But as the closing of as the film that has these new characters of the New Mutants, I think is actually pretty good. It sort of has this what would you call this? I would call this like the Breakfast Club. It's sort of a superhero Breakfast Club horror vibe to it, and I think it works. It has that sort of vibe. The horror vibes, I think, are actually really good, especially the way like they do all these creepy things with it. And some of the there are some action sequences in this film I actually do like, especially when you get to them fighting the giant bear. And I also think some of the relationships are actually pretty good, especially with Donnie and that wolf girl, Rani, something like that. I think that's kind of cool, even though it's technically a lesbian relationship. Please don't take that off. But overall, I thought that it was a pretty good film, and I liked it. So New Mutants is going in B tier. And I'm tired of this. And there you have it. That is my tier list of all 13 X-Men movies. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. My Instagram is Marvel6, and my Twitter name is Marvel1Fan. If you guys don't understand those names, head to my back section so you can follow me on all social medias. I'm also on Letterboxd. It's the same as my Instagram, Marvel_6_. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.